Okay, so I'll start off with the most understanding your background, right? You have been not from a design school per se. So how did you get into design, and like what's your thoughts about this lateral entrant people? How were your early days kind of? Would you also call it a similar journey for any lateral entrant? Maybe that could be the starting point and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I think so. I'll give you an unconventional answer, right? To this, I keep saying I had like 6, 7 years of engineering education, and honestly speaking, like right in the middle of my masters, I started realizing it was not for me. I mean, I loved the subjects, I loved the studying part, but the job that it had at the end of it, I mean, it was very different from what I wanted to do, and
This is Audiogyan, and I am your host, Kedar Nimkar. Welcome to a deep dive into the minds of luminaries from the Indian creative world.
you know how like people say like you should always have a career where the world is headed, not where the world has been, right? And I felt like whatever I was learning, like the machineries and antenna systems and telecommunication through like these giant like base stations that you would have to kind of go and get placed in. It would have been a field job. So I would have been like somewhere in Europe for working for like a telecom company, like a station head, and then that would have been like a very interesting ladder. I was like,
Mhm.
maybe not. It's cold outside, and I don't like working physically hard. And so I started exploring like computers and internet and stuff, and I would consider myself lucky that a lot of the sort of market forces and where the world was headed aligned well at the time. For example, like the iPhone had launched at the time. I've told this story before, right? Like I pestered my dad enough to get me an iPhone 4, and this was the first smartphone that I've had, and I still have it with me. I have that
Oh,
iPhone 4 with me. I kind of it's like a nice piece, where it all started, and that just fascinated me, right? Like no new mode of computing, everything that comes with it, like in terms of history. And all I wanted to do was have my own app on the phone because I saw apps, and I think App Store was already live by then because I think App Store came up with iPhone 3 or something, if I'm not wrong. So I was like, I need an app on the phone. I want an app that I have created. So started like learning a little bit of coding. Obviously, I was doing like web development already by then, right? Like designed websites, built websites, HTML, CSS. Thankfully, was easy enough, and people were like quite okay being hands-on. So I started doing that. Objective C. I started learning that a little bit, and that's kind of what my entry to this entire world of design was. If you remember, there used to be like some really popular Mac bloggers, Macworld, the conference that used to be there, like the
yeah,
Apple
yeah,
conference,
yeah.
like that was like, wow, like what would it be like to kind of be there in Macworld, and I remember following this guy, Marco Arment, who used to have like Instapaper type apps. Over the years, he ended up building a lot of stuff. He used to share his Tumblr story. These all were like apps and people making money from apps. So I was like, yeah, that's kind of like the career I want. I don't know what to call it, but it does seem to have design as an element in it, right? So maybe that's fine, and then there is something there. But honestly, like there were many pursuits like that at the time, right? Like, acha, ye bhi kar sakte, ho bhi kar sakte, and then you realize like, okay, most of them don't have enough money or longevity to call it like a career. So that way I got lucky that at least whatever, like 12, 11, 12 years later, also people still are okay paying money to whatever skills, Shreyas, you and I, Kedar, we all have, and God knows how long it goes on for, but I think it's worked out okay. So yeah, that was my sort of like a side entry to these things. I think if I hadn't gotten the MacBook from like a shitty MacBook at the time, or let's say the iPhone or not, I don't think this would have been possible because you had to really feel these products in your hands, and then like kind of use them to see how meaningfully different they were, and that's when that kida of like, yeah, maybe I want to like do something like this, I want to be the person who made or had some role in making this. I want to be that person. So that's kind of how it started. How I feel about these people, who have a lateral entry, I think they take it more seriously. I feel they take the career more. What do you call, like, you know how you get something that you've always wished for but had no hope of getting,
Hmm.
like you
Hmm.
always cherish that. You feel like like you don't take it for granted, because it wasn't handed to you. You kind of had to push your way through. And I feel I do feel that a little bit. Obviously, I come from privileged background. I can't say that I didn't have a lot of the basics. I think those were sorted, but more like the confidence of, hey, I could be a designer, or let's say it is a career that I can plow my way through. That all came just through sheer force of will. And I respect everybody who has treaded that journey, because obviously they have gone through the same kinds of self doubt and like, what if it doesn't work out, and then they still took the plunge. So I like the people who come from sideways and just break all the walls and say like, hey, here I am, you have to take me seriously, and
Hmm.
I'm not going to go away. You can ignore me, but what is that? Yeah, you can I don't know, I forgot that phrase,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, you can't ignore me, rather.
Correct.
So I like that a lot of the people who come from design backgrounds do have like a very different type of a mindset. I wouldn't say wrong. It's just that it places them psychologically slightly differently compared to people who feel like they had to, somehow make it happen because
Hmm.
there was no other option. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. I
Hardik, a
have
follow-up to that. What is the first app that you designed? I'm very curious to know.
Yeah, I ended up making only one app, and that was a Bitcoin price tracker app. Coincidentally, I also blew a lot of money in crypto over the years. But that time, back in 2011, 12, was the time I was actually able to make some money with crypto. And that time I wanted to keep track of like Bitcoin prices, because obviously I had a sizable amount of investment there. And I was like, yeah, why should I have to go to the website? There were no apps at the time in crypto. Like, you had to go to that landing page, you had to like keep refreshing it, and then the price, because it fluctuated like, so frequently. So I made a coinometer app. I had a case study on it also on my old website. I probably have the sketch file also still. That app basically polled. There was an API, a free API, I think, by some kind of a Bitcoin price server, and that polled every 5 seconds to get the latest price. And I wrote like a logic like, oh, if it goes up, then it should show like the delta in green. If it goes down, it should show the delta in red. I should have also like the PNL visible to me at all times. So like, from the price at which I purchase, how much is it right now? And like, when can I sell? Basically, that's what my intent was, right? Like, when is it enough money so that I can say, "ठीक है, like, let's get out of this."
correct.
So it was like literally a 2-page app, and I was horrible at design back then. I mean, I look back at it and I laugh, but it did teach me basic coding. I pushed the app live. It was free. Still spent $99 on that app store developer account, and set up all of that. But it was fun. It gave me a lot of confidence that, hey, maybe I can also do it, and you know that feeling of like, you launch an app and it gets approved for the first time and it
Hmm.
goes live on the Play Store. I was dating my wife back then. They weren't married. And I sent her the link and she was like, oh, I need to buy an iPhone to download your app, because, like, I don't know who else will.
Nice, nice.
So yeah, there was fun times. Fun times. So Coinometer is what it was called. I was horrible at branding, clearly. But yeah, that's what it was.
Cool.
And this
I
must have been
have
a time when
sorry. I
Bitcoin
have
was 400.
No, you
Sorry,
want to
go
take
on.
this again? No, no, you want to take
No,
this
no, no, go
again
on.
because I overlapped. No, no, I just wanted to like ये पूरा काट देते छोटा सा piece. I just
Ah.
wanted to follow up on ये entry which Hardik mentioned about, right? Like वो बाद में लेते हैं. But you continue. इकडनं परत घेऊया. Start. हाँ.
So this must have been a time when Bitcoin was what, $700?
Even lower.
Even lesser?
Bitcoin.
Even less.
I have seen the journey. I think somebody in Netherlands. My roommate in Netherlands. I used to live with five Dutch people, five Dutch guys, and me. So there was like 6 people in a 4-bedroom apartment. They told me, hey, there is this thing called Bitcoin, and like, you should buy it. I think it was, I remember it was 300 because I remember it being going 10x. So I've lived it from $300 to $3,000. And I mean, whatever goes 10x in like a few months, nothing, right? Like, like there's no way that's possible. So that's the journey I lived, and it was crazy because I was obviously living on my parents' money at the time. They were paying for fees, and I there was no way you could earn in Netherlands part-time income. So my dad was sending me money. Obviously, he didn't know I was actually occasionally also buying Bitcoin. Couldn't even tell it to him. Thankfully, it went 10x, not 1/10. And so yeah, like so it was way earlier, yeah. And I wish I still held them. I would have not needed to work. I think at least for 2-3 years, I could have been chilling somewhere.
Were you at least able to pay off your master's fees with Bitcoin?
No. It wasn't. The masters were way more expensive. And I didn't have that many Bitcoins. But today I would have been able to fund 5 different students with if I did. Just crazy story, yeah.
So, Hardik, I wanted to fast forward a little bit, right? I think from
Yeah.
those exciting early days towards sort of becoming a little more responsible, taking more accountability, and towards that journey of becoming a lead designer, right? I know that you've written an essay on this, and I want to get to that in a bit. But can you talk to us a little bit about that journey? Like, what were some things that came naturally to you? I mean, from your Coinometer story, clearly initiative was right up there. But what were some other things that you had to like deliberately learn on that journey?
Yeah. I think a few things. I see. I definitely started as like a rookie, not knowing enough, about design. Um, all the work that I'd done before InstaMojo, right? Like, which was my first serious quote unquote job. It was, I would say, like unsupervised. Like I was building things, I was designing, but there was nobody really like guiding me or helping me with feedback. I did a few client projects where like the clients would have some things to say about the designs, and then you change them and all. But it's never from the point of view of, oh, let me help you grow. It's more like, no, this is what we need. This is where you are. Like, just bridge that gap and give us what we need. So it was never about my own growth. But yet there was plenty of content online. So like most of my growth just happened from me passively sifting through all of that, the articles and stuff. But obviously I needed like a serious environment, right, to get actually growing. So I remember like packed my bags, and when I came to InstaMojo, this Kormangla office, which I live very close by now, and we always like drive by that, and I remember the memories. A suitcase मैंने रखा Wipro Signal पे, and like I didn't know where the office was, and I had to call, I think Sampad or Siddharth, I forgot. And I was like, "Bhai, office kahan hai?" And like you just walk. I didn't have a house or anything, right? Just literally landed after signing the offer letter, and I went there, and I was like, "Wow, that's what a startup looks like." People in shorts, people like ऐसा literally सो के काम कर रहे थे, like lying like on a laptop on their stomach and just like coding while sleeping. And I was like, great. I mean, that's I guess it starts. I still have photos from those days, and my files from those days. I've saved all of that, and I realized that like though I practically knew nothing about design. I remember Apoor, who was my product partner at the time, much more senior than I am. Siddharth, Kedar, Siddharth, right? King Siddharth was the first designer I worked with in a formal setting. Namrata was there. Like I saw them work, and I got the feedback from Apoor on some of my early projects, and I was like, yaar, ye वापस ना भेज दे. कि यार, Hardik, I think we made a mistake. I don't think you're cut out for this. We hoped that you would know all of this, but you clearly don't. A lot of newbie mistakes, and just I was full of myself a little bit, like, oh wow, I cracked this job and all, at least for the first 1 or 2 days, and then it all vanished like that. Okay, like I actually don't know anything. I would have to learn everything from scratch. And I think, Shreyas, to answer your question, I see, and this has remained true as a thread, all throughout last 11, 12 years is that I always told myself that I don't have another option, and I genuinely don't. That I have to make it work, and it's funny because like even when I joined Unacademy, almost now 3.5 years back, like I've had days where I literally was face palming at looking at myself, right? Like, what the hell did I just say today? Like, that obviously did not make sense. How did I make this mistake? And I think the secret isn't just recovering from that. Like, how quickly you recover from that, and don't be. It's funny, right? Like, you also have to be hard on yourself, but actually don't. Like, not hard enough that you would give up. So it's like you have to convert that into healthy stress, or like healthy pressure of performance upon yourself, right? Like, yeah, I want to expect better out of me, but I also want to give myself the time, so that I'm able to kind of get there. And Instamojo in a way taught me that, right? Like, I've had a very candid conversation with Sampad and Apur one night, like, hey, like, I don't know if uh, am I doing good? Like, do you really see any value? You're paying me my salary was like 12 lakhs at that point, right? Like, I was like, you're paying me 12 lakhs, right? Like, I feel that's a lot of money. um like, do you see value? And they're like, no, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, I mean, you're doing good work, like, you're taking feedback well, you're very open to debates, you're open to like conversations. And I'm like, okay. like so I think those series of conversations started to make me realize that, okay, there's more to design, as in there's more to just the design itself, but also the conversations, also the openness you show in solving problems, or like just being a good team person, right? Like, just being fun to be around, somebody that other people want to work with. So I was like, okay, maybe those skills are also important, right? Like, and nobody had showed me the, like, the design ladder at that point, right? So I was like, what soft skills, so so those things started to make me realize that, okay, I do bring some things of value. There are some gaps that I need to fill. And thankfully, through these conversations, I've realized that there is luxury of time, right? Like, these people are not going to give up on me. They're not going to send me back. It's okay. I think that I can like kind of figure this out. So yeah, it after that, once I realized that I had the luxury of time, and I could just like grind my way out. Things became very clear because I was great at that. I was great at grinding because all throughout my school life, that's the only thing I've done. And this is also what people kind of hate me for when I am public with this opinion of mine, that you have to grind. I mean, not everybody has to grind. Okay, let me also not
No, no, I believe that.
poke the bear right now, but I feel that's the only way it's worked for me. So, like, if I have to give a genuine advice, like, I would say, yeah, you should grind if you can. Right? If you can't, sure, figure other way out. So that's what's kept me going. So a lot of what Shreyas, you said, right? Like, how did I think of becoming like a lead designer and all? Like, gradually, like, when you start like producing some amount of work, you start to get confidence. I think this industry is really good at helping you with that confidence and the feedback loops. And thankfully, I had plenty of that in Instamojo, right? Like, people told me objectively, Hardik, like, look, you seem like you're improving. This project is definitely better than like your last one. Here you collaborated well, you communicated well, you helped out the engineer push it through. You kind of you were there when we needed you. So I think that the confidence started stacking up, and that at some point made me realize that, okay, maybe like, I probably am ready for the next phase. All right, I'm skipping a few steps here, but the point was that that feeling of like, okay, it's the third project that is of the exact same nature, and I'm kind of starting to get a little comfortable, or let's say a little more assured in my ways. I should probably figure out like a slightly bigger challenge or slightly different environment at that point. And obviously this can go wrong. This doesn't always go right. People make poorly timed switches all the time, right? But thankfully, like, I've always told this to my wife, right? Like, uh, I'm 4 on 4 on that feeling so far in my career. Every time I've felt that, it's usually turned out okay, for the better. And that's kind of how that whole lead thing happened, right? Like, when I felt like I was turning a page at Instamojo, like, my thing was like, okay, what's next? Like, what does uh, bigger work look like from here? You know, and Kedar kind of now features in the story a little bit, because at that time, like, I was looking at like some of the companies I could go and work at. you know. And obviously at the time, like this is what, 2015, you know, and you
Yeah.
are looking at, you know, like who are the companies that are doing the best design work in India, right? Or rather in Bangalore. And like ClearTrip, obviously the name just kept coming up. They were like hard to ignore, as I say.
Yeah.
And I looked up like who works there, and it was obviously Suneet was there. Roosh, I think, was still involved at ClearTrip back then.
Mm, mm.
You know, and I remember Sogan. There was like I forgot the name,
Yeah.
but there was like
There
a
were like
design.
many, yeah. Sugan, Jaideep, and I think Nirzar were there. Yeah.
Nirzar was there, yeah, and
Yeah.
Kedar, obviously, you were there. I think I was just in awe of like how um, how a company can get everything right in terms of being like a design and product minded company, and I just wanted to like find a way to get to that company. And I genuinely remember that day when I asked somebody in Instagram, do you think I can go work at ClearTrip? Do you think you know, I'm good enough now to get the foot in the door? And they said, yeah, I mean, I probably asked somebody wrong. I don't think the office boy was in the right mood that day. So, but I was like, okay, maybe if he says yes, maybe there is a chance, you know. And yeah, I like I started exploring a bit. I think Suneet was probably transitioning out at that point, and my timeline is a bit hazy at that time. But what I do remember is I I pursued ClearTrip to become some sort of a lead or like a slightly more senior designer than who I was. And Suneet had started Design Capital at the time. So then basically what I said was like, it's either ClearTrip or Suneet. And I preferred ki, theek hai, chalo, if I get to work with Suneet, then that's maybe better because I would get to grow working with him. And that ended up working out. I still remember, Kedar, I keep telling all the team members in my team about that Sunny Brito
Yeah.
design exercise that I had done. And I'm sure like some 100 designers in that era all have at some point in their lives done that, you know, design assignment. You know, fun times when people didn't like write Twitter threads about being given a design assignment. You know, they just went heads down and did them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I
By
very
the way,
fond
I
memories. Yeah.
by the way, I still continue that alarm clock test which we did. I still
Very good.
continue, and it's a classic deal breaker for a lot of senior candidates also still late.
I
Yeah, sorry.
remember. I remember my conversation. I think I met you and Subbu in that Jayanagar JP Nagar office of ClearTrip. You know, and
Yeah, yeah,
I remember it was almost. I had goosebumps visiting that office because obviously all this while, you know, and Shreyas, like, see, the funny thing is somebody coming from Ahmedabad, which has no tech happening there apart from like heavy industries and
Mm.
stock market. Like for me, like these offices were like, wow, look, okay, this is exactly where like the innovation happens, you know. Like, and I had once more, I had that feeling when I visited Bay Area for the first time, right? Like, so I had similar feeling visiting Bangalore. You know, oh, this is Flipkart. This is like you know, the OGs of like Indian startup world. Similarly, when I went to ClearTrip office, I was like, wow, this is like, I booked tickets from ClearTrip, but I've never actually like seen the people behind it, right? Like, and it was crazy, and went through that experience, and you know, I still remember that office very visually. You know, like Kedar, I don't know if you will, but it was two people sitting in that office in a ClearTrip meeting room, right? And I had never had an interview where two people were talking to me. It was always
mhm,
one-on-one or like, you know, phone call or like very like distance enough that you feel comfortable and like you don't feel intimidated. And but this was me like in clear trip. Like I just remember chugging glasses of water. I was like, let's just calm myself down. So I don't end up saying something that that you know, starts on the wrong foot. But it was fun. I genuinely loved that entire process. Gave me confidence. I even have the offer letter. Yeah, Kedar, you won't believe. Sankalp and I were looking at that offer letter 3 days ago, just searched in my inbox, like I cracked ClearTrip, you know, and that was the happiest day of my life back then, right? Like the company that
Nice.
prides itself on design, you know, I was good enough to get the foot in the door and take it through the offer letter. And yeah, it coincided with Suneet. I ended up going with Suneet, obviously, as things panned out. No regrets. I think had a great time working with him as well. So that was kind of my lead into sorry, I went on a big tangent, but this is the part of story I didn't actually share anywhere. So I was like, maybe worth talking about. Yeah. Because that was my like pre-lead setup, Shreyas, if that helps.
Got it. Yeah, that's super interesting. And I think one of the challenges that we've seen, designers face, right, is having a slightly hard time to assess where they are right now, and where the gaps are, and what are the opportunities for them to grow. And I think part of this problem is because of leadership still emerging in the ecosystem, right? And compared to, say, the West. And you obviously now are defining those frameworks, especially at Unacademy. And you've obviously written this essay on who's a lead designer. Um, you talk about core competencies such as ownership and accountability and so on. But I found that 2x2 matrix you draw at the end, that like really centers around communication and collaboration, right? Like, I thought that
Yeah.
was really interesting. Can you unpack that for the audience a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the roots of this go back to my time at Instamojo, right? I think I remember from that time, like, and see, funny thing is, I always remember work being this way, where every individual is usually high ownership. They kind of don't require other people to watch over their work, or kind of double check if they have ticked all the right boxes. Like, because I come from that environment, and I think this is large parts to the culture at Instamojo, right? Like they were one of the extremely high agency, high ownership cultures, and people thrived. I think everybody has done spectacularly for themselves who were in Samujo at in that era. So I think because it started off that way for me, I never actually realized how different other people have it, who don't come from similar cultures, which is why like I ended up feeling the need to write it down. Because yeah, I realized that like a lot of people are actually okay producing the bare minimum, albeit at high quality, but not doing the legwork that comes with design, right? And nowadays, like obviously, I realized when I started hiring from different companies and I started hiring from different parts of the countries, different levels of experience, that it does not come naturally to people, and you have to somehow codify that into the way your team operates, or the way you kind of set the culture, or like you make you draw the line at what counts as complete body of work, right? So that's why I ended up penning that down, right? Like, hey, like if you are a designer, um, the craft itself, or the artifacts of your design, like that's literally the bare minimum that you need to produce, right? Obviously, like if that's not there, then you shouldn't even be in the company. But everything above that is what actually makes you more effective, more of a team player, and selfishly more successful, right? Because if those skills are not stacked on top of your craft, like you run the risk of actually A, being ignored, B, your work being packaged by somebody else, C, like not getting the right credits, D, like not like coming across as like a complete package yourself, right? So this is why like when I say lead designer, right, like what I mean is someone who obviously is really good at design, right, really good at taking feedback, everything that comes with craft. So I won't zoom into that, but someone who keeps their stakeholders in complete awareness about the state of the work, somebody who collaborate really well, require, if they need inputs, if they need clarity, they go and seek that out, they go and talk to engineers, right, like about feasibility of their designs, they go and close all the loops that usually are open in a messy project, and all projects are messy in startups. Like you kind of have to do that legwork. So people who are lead designers, at least in the way I have set up the team, they cannot afford to kind of just remain or live in Figma a day after day. They have to get up, they have to talk to people, they have to present their work, they have to come to me and like get their work reviewed, get the feedback, get that incorporated in their designs. They have to, ask for like clarity. They have to kind of push the work forward, and I think I met Srinath recently from Swiggy, and like we spoke about this at length. I told him, right, like funny thing is like before your design work meets the customer, your design work meets the org, right? Like the company itself, right? Or the people within. Um, is there someone carrying that work through the multiple layers of hierarchy or conversations, all the way to the finish line. It doesn't get there by itself. It doesn't like just carry itself on merit. If that was there, then we would all just be sitting at home. Nobody would need to come to office. Hey, there's my Figma file, make it live, right? Like there are so many decisions that you have to take runtime, so many loops that you have to close as things are getting built, and a lead designer is always there on the front line, kind of, helping take decisions and like, closing these loops. So I think in order to make design successful, which is a huge part of design as a function, right? Not the creation, making it successful, making your work successful, or at least pushing your work live, right? That in itself becomes the role, Shreyas. So I think that's why I felt the need to codify that into some objective pillars that I can evaluate my designers on, or rather I can like kind of share with people and say like, hey, look, if you want to hire like a good lead designer, these are things you should look for, and these are hard to like put an objective number to. I can never actually get this out of a resume or get this out of their portfolio. I would have to speak to people they've worked with. I would have to like do ref checks. I would have to like kind of have them take me through a journey of a project. But that's also because the ROI of hiring like a great design lead is that much higher. So you kind of have to put in the work. So you have to kind of taste that out of them, right? Like if they did these things and speak to their partners who worked with them. But if they've done that, if they have done this well, I think they would become like irreplaceable, and I have seen very few people who pride themselves in like doing the dirty work well, doing the like I there have been days over the last 3.5 years where I've like uh, you know admired people for a very well crafted Slack message that eliminated 5 different open points that were floating around in the team, that answered a few questions, that drove clarity, that kind of brought like a huge group together and sort of aligned them, right? Like, and I love that. I love that. I feel that's also design in a very weird sense of the word, right? Like the role of design is to bring clarity out of like a foggy, messy situation of any kind. And I feel communication is one of the most important part that gets anything done. Like, so I mean, there was no, I mean, that whole lead designer essay, I just, uh, I couldn't not write it, right? Like I was like, this has to be, written down because of how misinformed people usually are, and then they get disappointed because they don't grow or they don't get rewarded or they don't become a lead designer. And I end up telling them, right, like, are you even reliable, right? Like, are you someone who your boss can like give a body of work to and say like, yes, I trust the person to do everything well: design, collaboration, communication, delivery, quality assurance, and pretty much end to end. And if you're not ready to do that, you're not really a lead designer, right? Like you won't be reliable enough for people to take that bet on you for anything of substance. So yeah.
I think I have a follow-up there, right?
Sorry, Shreyas, I'll just interrupt
Sorry.
here. I
Yeah.
wanted to add two more small
Sure.
things because even I noticed it. Is that Hardik, first of all, like I agree on both the points for two reasons, which are slightly different from what you said. Is that one is culturally, we are not a society who does a lot of documentation. I mean, when like I interview a lot of musicians and writers and different sorts of people. So I remember clearly there was a person named Pandit Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande, and he wrote the first form of documentation for Hindustani classical music. And he was actually pushed back because yeah, I mean, when you write it down, it becomes rigid because you're put on a paper,
Yeah.
while it's very fluid in our sort of oral tradition and culture, right? But in our world, that was back then. In this world, it's very much required. So a good start to at least document what is there is, I believe strongly in that. And the second is, personally, it helped me because when I was in Clear Trip, and I was I think the same time that you mentioned, around 2017, 16 kind of a thing, 16, 15. And I was hoping to start leading the team, and I think Suneet was there back then, and I said like, can I become a lead designer or a principal designer? And he forwarded one career ladder. I think it was made by Zendesk or someone. And I saw the columns of ownership, authority, org awareness, and bunch of other parameters there. And I realized, dude, like I'm a junior designer. I'm just on Figma all day, right? That gave me a lot of perspective as to what all I need to demonstrate and do in the coming year so that I'll automatically move to a higher position. So I think the ladder, whichever shape and form, right? As long as there's some documentation and framework in place, I think it's always helpful. And now for last 5-10 years, it has been really helpful, not just for hiring, but also yearly appraisals. I think this is the time, right? So Jan, Feb, March will be like
Yeah.
the things. So it's really helpful. Yeah, I thought I'll share that.
No, it's 100%. I think I mean, we can get into like the whole ladder part. I am very certain that that level of clarity about what's expected out of people, like even Shreyas, that lead designer post was just to, in a funny way, like I wrote it because I wanted my own team members to read it. But at the same time, I think that clarity helps, right? Like, look, these aspects of work are also important, and you can't ignore them and then have the same expectation of growth purely based on the design skills. Obviously, those need to be there, but there are a few more things that come with it. Yeah.
By the way, Hardik, I really love this about you that you write all of this stuff down and share it. I really wish more design product leaders and founders did this. I definitely want to do this more. But I think in the other posts that you write, right, like in no career conversations in isolation, I want to quote something you've written. The way to get to the work you want to be doing in the future is earning the trust of your manager. This is very interesting and really resonated with me, at least when I was thinking back in my career. And you were mentioning obviously Suneet and a bunch of other folks. Are there any stories, examples you can share where, earning that trust really unlocked this opportunity that you were looking for?
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is especially true in large teams where you would often find people with similar skills and similar level of agency ownership. I think what I what I essentially look for is, see, obviously in any company things get tough, right? Not all projects are the same. Sometimes you would have like a very hairy project that will be messy. Let's say the leadership is involved, a lot of opinions are involved. Somebody who would be the designer for that project, they would have to be very resilient, very open to kind of changes in directions and stuff. Like I've ended up realizing, or rather learning after having had so many designers kind of work with me through this role, that it's me who should know or be on top of like the uniqueness of every designer, right? Like who is the best suited for what kind of work, which designer would you task with for a certain project and stuff. But in that mental work that I do in my kind of categorization of all the members of my team, reliability sits the highest, right? Like I can accept let's say to an extent, right? Like not that great level of execution, as long as it comes to me, and I have room to kind of improve it with feedback and stuff. I can't accept, like, let's say, lack of care. I can't accept somebody who cheats their craft. I can't accept if somebody does not think about that problem statement wholeheartedly or does not commit to that body of work. I can't tolerate that. And that's why, like, I've always even took examples within my own team, right? Like whenever I have picked people for a problem statement, or whenever I'm doing that matching, like it's a big responsibility, because, and I take that very seriously, is because like the cost of failing in doing that is extremely high for multiple reasons, right? Like, A, the project does not shape on time. You look bad as a leader. The designer gets disappointed because they couldn't somehow make it successful, and I'm sure they partially feel responsible for it. there is wasted time, resources, everything, right? So that's always a crucial decision making factor. And I remember one incident from my days at I think this was in Google admin console team, right? Like I used to work in Google Cloud for a bit, and I remember like speaking to my manager about it, right? Like they used to do this thing where like you pair people, right? Like you pair people with another designer, and like you just let them kind of see like how the other designer goes about it. Like why I liked that was because there is like a running commentary from the designer who's going through this experience, and you can ask them questions. Hey, like why did they say that? Like why did you get this? Okay, why are you working on this project? Okay, like why are we meeting for the seventh time for design review? Right? Like does that person not trust you? Or like, yeah, you already saw that feedback. Why you already resolved it, right? Like could this not be async? Like through those conversations, you realize that there is the manager operates so differently with different designers, right? Like the one I was speaking to, right? Like they actually had more number of reviews. They actually had faster feedback cycles. They actually had like a very different nature of feedback altogether to this designer than to others. And then I realized that, okay, maybe like the manager calibrates their style to people, right? And then later, obviously, the designer wouldn't have told me that, hey, that's because I'm more reliable, right? Like that's not something you just say. I ended up learning by observing their trajectory and the other designer's trajectory that that person that I was kind of shadowing or talking to just got the job done all the time. So they kept getting like anytime there was a project that the manager would look for a suitable designer for, like it invariably more often than not landed up to that person. And that started to tell me like, okay, maybe it's because like in a similar spectrum of craft, like you would pick the best, most reliable person, especially when there is a project that has high stakes, right? And I have a different essay, Shreyas, where I say something very opposite, right? Like when you have the luxury of time, you look to grow the team. When you don't have the luxury of time and when things are on fire, you look to the most capable person to get the project done and don't optimize for team growth because you don't have that luxury, right? So there's like wartime method and peacetime method. Like peacetime method is, sure, I would love to bring the average competency level of the team up, so I would push any project which has the luxury of time to the junior most designer who's probably barely suitable to do this project, because through this project I would help elevate them, which would raise the bar on average. But if I don't have the luxury of time, the stakes are high, I can't do that because I know everybody would end up looking bad, right? And it's in nobody's interest. So then I end up doing, which is exactly why in a lot of wartime companies, or rather a lot of companies where most of the work is fast, high stakes, no room for failure, it makes for like a terrible breeding ground for internships, or it makes for terrible breeding ground for like junior designers coming into the culture, because there is no room to fail. And whenever, I mean, in order to have growth happen, you need to have room for failure, right? Like that's just how growth happens. So there are both those extremes that kind of exist, and having seen both in some shape and form, um, but yeah, I mean, generally speaking, like the reliability pillars stands pretty strong. Yeah. Does that help explain?
Yeah, and I think we should definitely link to your essay in the show notes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Love that.
Okay, so Hardik, like, great to sort of get these nuances and a lot of food for thought for me also, because I'm working in a very different kind of a culture now. Setting those expectation upfront and like setting the whole culture of getting feedback and pushing the boundary of design really helps, right? But just I'm trying to connect the dots now that you are kind of a you are a leader, and you're heading teams, right? And you started off as a lateral entrant where you were kind of skeptical, so I'm sure you must have uh, worked on your craft a lot, and then like other skills as you progressively grew. uh, Now how does the day look like, right? I mean, this is especially because a lot of designers think uh, or have a rosy picture which you had when you entered Clear Trip. We knew the inside stories, but like how does your day look like, and how much of you're still hands on just to set the benchmark, or you like how does it happen with the leads that you're working with, and then to the junior most designer?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, a great question, right? I think, see, like when people say like, what's the secret to growing fast, or what's the secret to kind of getting to like leadership and all, and I usually just look back and I find that there was nothing really extraordinary, right? Like that you had to do. I think just sticking to getting con continually good at designing itself is it can take you very far. You're like you keep working on your taste, you keep working on your own skills and ability, your articulation of feedback to your team, right? I think like there is nothing new that has happened in like 15-20 years, right? Like Kedar, you would know, right? Like back in it's not like we used to do anything different. I mean, it's the same thing, right? Like you design, you create like a handoff file, you speak to engineers, you involve everybody whose opinion matters and kind of have a skin in the game, and like you just kind of take things forward. That alone hasn't really changed at all. I think our interpretation has required to be fancier, which I don't understand, right? Like everybody expects ki like, oh no, it has to be more than that, right? Like kuch to special kiya hoga, ya kuch to hona chahiye na, like what are frameworks this, like no, really, right? Like it's just loving the boring parts, right? Like I show up every day. Like what the day looks like is usually there are 2 or 3 really big high importance projects ongoing at any given time, right? And there are 2 or 3 mid to small size projects ongoing, right? In a team of our size. Usually, I have a couple of reviews scheduled. Usually, I have like a couple of app testing sessions that are scheduled. We do daily stand-ups on like the high stakes projects. So we kind of meet as a team every day. We resolve decisions. We kind of answer any open questions that are there. Presence helps, right? So Kedar, to answer your question, a lot of the times leadership is just about being there, right? Like I equate it to parenting a lot, right? Like although obviously there are clear differences, but as a parent, right, like you are doing half the job if you're just there, first of all, right? Because most of the problems arise when you're not even there. So I think as a leader, right, like you being there is a sign of just the team feeling more relaxed, the team knowing that hey, like we have the person, we can always go for help, like everything's fine, right? So you lead a lot by your body language, you lead a lot by your presence, even much before you lead by your words or actions, right? Like so I try to never miss like a day in an office, right? Like I'm literally sitting in office right now, right? Like I would find like reasons to kind of just go to office, be there for the team. And I've in my 3.5 years, I would have all in all worked for like whatever 10 days from home, and I hated every bit of it. I love my family. It's just that I hate working from home is because I don't get to see my team. I don't get that energy, of that the office has. So like yeah, showing up, that's what my day is all about, and just being available for the team, right? Like and recently I've started to kind of dabble into this whole, like Shreyas would love this, right? Like this whole notion of absent leadership, right? Like a lot of the times you kind of have to let the team fight their own battles. You don't have to always like babysit them. You don't have to always solve their problems for them. But there is always this like the duality. It's a very whole another topic on itself. But Boz Tank from Facebook has written about this, right? Like he calls this, I think, vacation leadership or something. I'll find the exact term. But what he basically says is that like you've done your job well as a leader if you actually are able to take vacations and like the team would just be fine.
Nice.
Trust me, I've done that also, and things are always fine. Like I'm thankfully I have like really mature designers. I'm blessed with like a great team, but I just cannot like this is more like a personality thing, right? Like I just can't not be there, right? Like and I love my work so much. I love my team so much. I love what I do. You could tell me like, Hardik, I want us to design an app that would never ship. We will never have budget for it, and I would still have fun designing it. Like, sure, why not? Like, let's okay, then all the more reason to design it because there are no constraints, right? So I think like the loving the act of design is what keeps me going, keeps bringing me to office, and just helps me tune out the noise, right? Like because I've kept it simple. Like it's almost like saying, I mean, we draw a lot of analogies in sports, but I love it when people say like I'm playing because I love it. I'll even after like 25 years of doing it, I still love it because I still do it because I love it. Like every time I step on the field, it still has the same goosebumps. Like I in a very weird way, like that's what I feel, right? Every time I get to the office, I feel like, wow, a day full of possibilities, a day full of like, aaj kuch naya kar sakte hai, like those ideas we can explore with the team, like, and it's just been that over like a
Hmm.
decade, right? Like, I loved my day in Instamojo, Ola, Google, Unacademy. Things will get tough, easy, layoffs हो रहे हैं, नहीं, salary hike नहीं मिलेंगे, जो भी है यार. It's that it will I have like a great day at work, and
Correct.
will a healthy part of that day be filled with the act of designing? That's all I ask for. Leadership, managing, है नहीं है, ठीक है. If I get to be a designer, and that's good enough for me. And I think this simple, not complicating it more than this, has just kept things like very. It's allowed me to focus on longevity, right? कि ठीक है यार, ये तो 40 साल भी कर सकते हैं. भाई इसमें इसमें तो ना कोई लैडर है ना कुछ है ना, ठीक है, हो गया ना लैडर, कर लिया वो 10 साल कर लिया. अब what other levels are there to chase? Like if I
Hmm.
realized that even after becoming an SVP, fundamentally your job still remains that of designing good quality stuff. So what other surprises are in there for me?
Yeah, yeah.
ठीक है. So like even the people who I idolize, वो भी तो वही कर रहे थे,
Correct.
टीम के साथ बैठ के डिजाइन कर रहे थे. वही करने को मिल रहा है. आई कंसिडर इट एज अ प्रिविलेज, एंड द फैक्ट दैट लाइक यू गेट पेड गुड मनी एंड यू गेट टू वर्क विद टैलेंटेड पीपल हु यू आल्सो कैन कीप लर्निंग फ्रॉम, काफी होता है उतना. एंड आई थिंक यू कैन गो वेरी वेरी फार. एंड आई डोंट थिंक अभी, लाइक इफ यू आस्क मी टुडे, लाइक हार्दिक, व्हाट वुड नीड टू चेंज अगले साल, व्हाट डज ग्रोथ लुक लाइक? Yeah, growth looks like I probably just work on slightly different product, or I don't know, like maybe a different domain. But would day to day look different? No, day to day तो यही होगा. So
Hmm.
and I think being okay with that, or rather actually cherishing that. यार हाँ यार, I love the monotony of uh, how amazingly predictable my day looks like. I love that, because your design problems have enough surprises. Your day shouldn't have that. It's like the same team, mostly the same members, same kind of work, same kind of day schedule. In fact, nowadays, I even keep most of my schedule also open. I don't keep any meetings. एक दो meeting होती है. Rest all is just I'm sitting in a room and like people keep coming and going. ठीक है, चलो हार्दिक ये discuss करते हैं, वो discuss करते हैं. If I have an idea, I call them in and like we do a whiteboarding session. It's mostly that, you know. So yeah, I think terribly simplified.
Great, great.
But if it's working, why change it?
Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. Great. I completely resonate with it because recently I've started running also, right? So उसमें कुछ करना नहीं है, बस भागना है. मतलब तुम 21K करो या like 42K करो, it's the same drill that you have to do over and over again. 10,000 hours of practice. Like सब जगह वही बोला रहता है. I wanted to borrow, in fact, Abhinit's words, which you said, right? Like Hardik, about uh, you're doing the mundane, but you're just like, that's why you can do it for a very long period. And I think he very nicely said in one of the other episodes that यार आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स करने के लिए पहले बॉक्स तो बनाना पड़ेगा, तो पहले बोरिंग काम करना ही पड़ेगा. राइट. आई लव द एनालॉजी देयर.
No,
कूल.
and I think see, novelty is overrated. I feel um, careers require long careers require consistency of any shape and form. अगर आप रोज आके ये बोल रहे हो कि यार आज हार्दिक कुछ हल्ला मचे, कुछ नया हो जाए, कुछ तड़क भड़क कुछ करते हैं, लाइक थोड़ा एक्साइटमेंट लाते हैं, यार वो you have to enjoy the mundane things. That's true for life. That's true for everything, right? Like that's true for everything long lasting. Everything long lasting does have cycles of repetition. And अगर आपको वो cycles ही नहीं पसंद, like if you say like nahi nahi ऐसा कैसे, like like how, like that's not how anything gets stronger or more refined. You only get refined through repetition, cycles of consistency. And if you keep chasing the novelty, which is why a lot of people like change what is their proxy? Team change कर देते हैं, company change कर लेते हैं, कुछ environment बदल जाएगा. Like yes, but that novelty, like वो 3 दिन लगता है आपको कि एनवायरमेंट बदल गया. द फोर्थ डे, हाँ यही है, वही कैंटीन है वहां पे, थोड़े से डिफरेंट, बट अब तो वो भी पुराने लगने लग गए. वही टीम मेंबर्स है, अरे वही फिग्मा, अरे वही हैंड ऑफ, वही इंजीनियरिंग, वही सारे सेम प्रॉब्लम्स. तो say people used to ask me what life looked like at Google. And I was like, nothing different. I mean, that 90% of it is the same, right? Like, yeah, I just didn't pay for food. Everything else was literally the same. I like there were PMs, there were engineers, designers, right? Like there were hard days, good days, but bulk of your work, which is why like I advise people to not optimize for novelty. I think you have to optimize for something higher or like something more meaningful than novelty. And otherwise, like you will start to like like the power of novelty also wears off if you keep exposing yourself to novelty every 6 months, right? And this is something where great mentorship helps, right? Like Shreyas, you talk about mentorship a lot, right? I think it's not about design. Design तो आप देखो projects करोगे सीख लोगे. It's like like in my conversations, I have Umesh as my mentor, who's SVP engineering at Unacademy, right? Like he and I share so much FaceTime every day in office. He shows up every day. He's very present, very available. And I attribute a lot of my leadership parts of the learnings to my conversations with him. And he said that, right? Like I asked him, so he became SVP before I did, and we were like just having casual conversation. I told him like, Umesh, like you must be feeling like feeling amazing, right? Like pay hike, position, like the first product intake SVP in the company. And he was like, नहीं यार, मतलब हाँ काम तो वही करना है, ठीक है. It's more like it's just a recognition. So it's an acknowledgement of what I was already doing. So it feels good, but like there is not enough goodness feeling that I can ride on for months. वो feeling का एक minor spike आया, वो खत्म हो गया, right? So I can't ever ask for promotion because उस promotion का high मुझे carry करेगा आगे. Like if that's what you need to carry yourself forward, कि अच्छा नहीं, I need that recognition, otherwise मैं अपने आप को push forward कैसे करूं, तो नहीं कर पाओगे. Because there would be times when for months and years recognition नहीं मिलेगा, title नहीं upgrade होगा, हो सकता है पैसा भी शायद ना मिले, right? Like, and that's one of my fears, right? Like नहीं मिल सकता. Would you be okay pushing further then also? That's when you really love what you do. And the only thing you have to ensure is, ठीक है, like उसमें there is a meaningful career in it, बस उसका कोई पैसा देने वाला हो, बड़े ना बड़े बात अलग है. So I think boring consistency is a weapon. Like if you end up like really enjoying that, that you become like lethal, right? And I compare that with I'm used to work with a lot of people I looked up to. I was like, यार मुझे तो fast भागना है, मुझे जल्दी growth करना है. When will I ever get to the levels where they are? And I realized that it was all about just being relevant. ये जो आप बोल रहे हो ना केदार कि यार 2015 में भी we knew each other, and here almost 10 years down the line we still know each other, and I know 2045 में भी ऐसे ही कुछ रिकॉर्ड कर रहे होंगे. It's because I know कि मैं तो more or less यही कर रहा हूँ, unless like a industry changing event happens that puts me out of job. कोई मुझे धक्के मार के निकाल देगा कि भाई हार्दिक तुम्हारा लैपटॉप छीन लेंगे ना, you can't design, ये गया, ये सब खत्म. Like that's the only way I'll not be doing this. Basically, right? So that if you have that level of clarity and tenacity, I think you can keep going. You can keep going for a long time. And if you just are there long enough, you would get better. You would get wiser, and hopefully you would end up doing financially well also. If the market keeps growing as well. So
yeah. No, brilliantly put. I want to change gears a bit and like talk about, I mean, what you said just now about वही करना है, it's at a very bigger, like zoomed out or a macro arc. करियर के लाइक न्यूएंसेस में लाइक जूनियर थोड़ा अलग कर रहा है, सीनियर थोड़ा अलग कर रहा है, लीडर थोड़े अलग टाइप के चैलेंजेस कर रहा है. ऑब्वियसली दैट विल बी कवर्ड इन द फ्रेमवर्क एंड द करियर लैडर. बट just trying to understand like in fact I did a series, complete 12-part series called Where Are the Designers, where I spoke to Srinath, Shreyas, Harish, credit say, Fatima from Gojek, a lot of people, and trying to understand that यार हायर कैसे करते हैं. लाइक इट्स अ वेरी वेरी बिग चैलेंज, स्पेशली वेयर आई कम फ्रॉम. Because if I join a company, typically, uh, yeah, 17, 18 years of experience, and then the junior or the person who's joining, even if they're senior, it's still like 5 to 6 years of experience. So the delta बहुत बड़ा है, right? 6 years and like 15 years, right? Almost 10 years, 11 years का difference है. So I needed that middle layer. And that's why I said, like, where are these lead designers, right? And what I'm observing, I could be wrong, but once you grow in that ladder, you become comfortable, you have a family, you have a work-life balance, and that's why these people are sitting in, say, Intuits or or like more MNCs kind of a thing than the
Yeah.
daily startup world, right? So yeah, even I took a tangent, but like how do you generally hire, right? And since you are coming from a non-design school background, which I am, that's why I'm stressing so much. How do you like spot talent? Like you said, reliability is one important parameter, but that's
Yeah.
once they come in, right? Like that is established through some exchange, or it will take some time to establish that. But just as like spotting a talent and then like doing that bet, do you think it's a
Yeah.
gamble? Like if you can speak a little bit about hiring and like how
Yeah.
does it
For sure.
happen?
For sure. I have two, three things, right? So, speaking of when you said ki a lot of people go sit at Intuit and Atlassian and all, I think there are only two ways you can hire easily, or rather, easy is a bad word, but it's more like you can hire in a simpler way. One is either you are uh, exemplary enough that people want to work with you. Individually, you are exemplary enough, and they can look past everything else and just say, ki, "Hey, Hardik, just because I want to work." And thankfully, our domain also provides that level of visibility to good designers. Ki you can create that kind of setup around you publicly that people just seek you out. That's one. So either you hire because it's you who people want to work with, or you work at a company where company ka brand is strong enough that you don't need to do any work. So basically, in Google never has a problem of hiring designers. It's because because everybody wants to work at Google, right? So like, and that's where like the challenging part comes. A lot of people, a lot of good design leaders go to companies where they have to establish a culture. That's like the hardest, right? Like, because if the company brand is not there, and they themselves haven't really put enough work in, like uh, showing that they are a great designer, a design leader that other people can work with. It's like you don't have the right ingredients. So you're now going to have to cook up a recipe with like very poor quality ingredients, and it's going to take a long time. So if you are like a design leader with like no visibility, not real work out there, or not having done like the legwork upfront, and also you are in a company where company also does not have that kind of a brand, then ab zyada kaam karo, fir it will take you like 3-4 years to kind of because then you have to do it the hard way. There is no cheat code. But if you have any of the previous two ingredients that I spoke about, right, like you have it better than most other people, right? And again, this was like an advice that Umesh gave me, right? Like he said, like Hardik, like the only way to become exemplary, forget design, any domain, is be an exceptionally accomplished person yourself first, right? Like people only want to work with successful leaders. They don't want to work with a leader who has not had like a successful trajectory themselves, right? So have one yourself first. So like have a very high bar for where your own career is headed, right? Like and how much of a what's the level of thought clarity and like the level of craft and stuff that you are able to establish that other people want to kind of get up to, right? So if you have done that work, like you already have become like you're already in that zone where people kind of seek out. Like, why did I go chase Sunit? Is because everybody I asked in 2015 who I should work with said like, "Hey, Sunit is the best guy," right? Like, I mean, if you want to grow in your career as a designer, like he's the person. So I sent my email to him, right? Like, "Hey, I would love to work with you. How do we make it happen? Tell me, and I'll do it." You know, I'm so happy that now, like, I do have a fair bit of inbound now. Like my own inbound, like people reach out through email, people reach out because, as Shreyas mentioned, right, like a lot of the writing essays that they see, that working with me article that I wrote, I completely wrote it out of just, like, let's just share this, right? Like I'm sure this has to be on the website. So by the way, Shreyas, we'll get into the writing part, but I use my website as my own personal note. So I actually, a lot of times there is no intent of sharing it publicly, but to like, where else could it be? या तो मेरी notes में होगा या वो landing page पे होगा. So it just allows me to share the link with people. So that's why I put it there. But when I did that, right, a lot of people said like, wow, this sounds like an environment I want to work in. So I think my first advice is always to create your own inbound, right? Like have an exemplary self that you portray out there through your work. Not don't fake your brand. Obviously, that's hard to do, and you shouldn't, because that's in a way being not genuine. But like if you're doing great work, like talk about it. If you're doing great work, show it, right? Like show what goes into good quality work, right? Like and put yourself out there, like offer help, because in your domain there is not enough help, right? So that's what I kept doing. Like, why do I go to meetups? Why do I go to like why do I lend my time for like coffee conversations as much as I can? Obviously with family it gets hard, but as much as I can, like doing that makes you top of mind in other people's heads, right? Like if they ever, I know for a fact that there are conversations that happen in Bangalore or generally in design communities where something I wrote or something I would have said gets brought up, right? And it's not because I brag about it. It's because I know that I'm doing something of value. I'm adding some kind of a value, right? I'm helping people with some level of clarity. Now that's how they remember me. Like, okay, if I work with this person, like I would have probably the same level of clarity in my career. I would get that same kind of feedback. I would have similar conversations. Great. That's all I needed. Where do I want to go work next? That person, right? So it's me having done that work allows me to have that inbound, and that makes hiring easy, because at least I don't have to ever look at an empty sheet and say, "Yaar, hamara pipeline hi nahi bana candidates ka kabhi." Like that's rarely happened. Like every time we sit down, ki, "Acha yaar, chalo, we'll need like a couple of designers. Where do we start?" We have a sheet, because everybody who inbound had reached out, we have put them in a sheet, and like we kind of we talk. So I think that's the first thing. Second, I think there is nobody has formalized how design hiring should be done. We all know how bad a lot of companies do it, or sometimes like some companies do it differently. But I think and this is something that my team came up with, the idea for Unacademy debut, right? Like literally just why not make it fun, right? Like why not make design hiring fun? And thankfully, when you are a design leader, you have the ability to do that. I couldn't have done it in Google because Google has their own way of hiring. So obviously, there are companies where you can't do this. But if you are in a startup, if you are building your own culture, you can. Who decides how you should hire? As long as you hire a good candidate. I mean, for all you know, I would just go put up like a sketching stall in a design meetup and like start hiring there. Like why not? So I think people don't put enough thought into like you could do it differently. You don't have to like do the boring interviews. You don't have to do like a product manager round, an engineering round, and like whiteboarding session. Like these are just attempts that other people have made, but why not do something differently? So we did that. Design debut was like just a fun challenge. We gave people like funny questions to answer and like a couple of things to solve for, and people loved it. Like from I think just a few tweets, we got 200 candidates with assignments filled, right? Like, and at that level of inbound is insane, right? Like, and I mean, call it power of brand, call it like just the exercise being fun. I like to think that it was more to do with the exercise, right? And you know what we promised at the end of it? We just said everybody who gets rejected will get a feedback call. We will not reject you on your face without explaining it. And everybody, I think we had a acceptance rate of I think 5%. We ended up hiring 11 people from it, and which means we had like some 100 plus people to reply to and do the calls for. I mean, our team, I didn't do any of those calls. Our team members who were leading the project, they went through this entire process for a month and a half. They were 45 days, they were doing these calls, just this, giving people feedback. Hey, you could have improved this. And rejected people have written us emails saying thank you, because that was the first feedback they ever got in their lives on their work, right? Bringing this back to InstaMojo days, right? Like the fact that I joined the company was the first time I actually got any feedback. So I think this is the reality of design world right now. Not having enough leadership brings lack of feedback, brings lack of objective measure for how good people actually are, And that's why like whatever little companies like ours are doing or other companies are doing in a I think Razorpay ended up doing a similar exercise. Like when you do something like this, people just flock. यार यार चलो यार इन्होंने तो कुछ different किया करते हैं. Like क्या पता हो जाए. So it's in a way it's sad, but it's also power is with people like us who are now thankfully sitting at least that level of authority where you could bring change, right? And I'm very proud of those efforts also that the team pulled off. I mean, I honestly I can't take any credit for it because it was entirely the team. We just discussed the idea briefly and they took it all the way to the finish line. But why did the idea even come about? It was because this was always in the conversations in our company, right? Like how do we like I don't want to be a team that cries about the problems. ठीक है तो कुछ करते हैं ना फिर let's try to solve it, right? Like why am I writing is because I don't want to cry about oh nobody writes. हाँ तो then show तो लिख के दिखाओ फिर कि what writing can do. Oh nobody hires. I mean everybody asks for like shitty exercises or like whiteboard sessions and छह round of interview. No, there is a better way to do it. Or those 11 people, I don't think there was a single error of judgment in the hiring, and many of them are still with us, and many of them will end up having like exceptional careers just because of the dedication and all that they showed. So I think that's it. And the final thing I want to say about hiring is spotting talent early, right? I think this is something Keith Raboy also talks about. There's no secret to this. It's just that if you spot talent early, you get them as a pure craftsperson. And there is a beauty in that because you can mold them through your culture however you want them to be. Right? There is almost no entitlement. There is a lot of humility. There is a lot of sincerity that comes with it. And there is a lot of self-inflicted pressure of, hey, I need to take this opportunity. I need to make it count. And I love that these are the right ingredients that the people would move mountains in order to be successful in your setup. So if you spot them early and give them a chance, right, provided that they're good, you end up like hitting jackpot more often than not, because then your culture will do the work. Your culture will end up molding them. Your culture will end up kind of like coaching them just through the sheer power of presence. I believe a lot in that power of presence, right? Like if you bring them into the system, and if they have the right ingredients, sincerity to learn and all of that, great, bravo. I mean, as a leader, you've done your job. Uske baad, your team will take care of them. So I think this is how I kind of think about it. Design lead hiring is a whole another topic. Shreyas, we've spoken about this, right? Like there are obviously challenges there. But yeah, generally these factors still remain true. You could still create a great inbound for leads also, because even they want to grow. I mean, as long as you show them that there is enough delta and that they still can grow in your setup, even most of this would still be true for them. But there are a few extra pieces you have to do. But
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, totally makes sense. There are a lot of yeah, actually हा portion पण cut करूया. No, makes
Either
sense,
I
makes
have
sense.
a
हाँ,
follow-up here.
yeah, good.
Yeah, so Hardik, I really love that you brought up this topic of spotting talent early, right? And something I've been thinking about is how a lot of hiring conversations tend to be very backward looking, right? Like the work people have done or the scenarios they've been in and so on. And this is especially true with early talent spotting, but I believe the real alpha here, especially from a company's point of view, is being able to gauge what can they do in the future, right? Like take a more forward-looking approach to hiring
yeah.
and not just look at what they've already done. What is your sort of perspective on this, and how do identify that potential in designers?
See,
And
yes,
and
if I
sorry, if I can
yeah.
also just append to that same question, is that then like do you spot that in say portfolios, or do you spot that in interpersonal communications, like just like beyond the regular interviews?
Yeah. No, I'll tell you. I think great. So I'll answer this whole thing. Shreyas, if I was about to say, right, like if I had the luxury of doing something else at this very instant, I would do something similar to what you are doing, and I'll tell you why. It's because there is, speaking of alpha, there is an insane amount of alpha in spotting talent right in the universities. And if I was doing what you're doing, I would actually work in semi-formal way with a few universities who have a great track record of um, producing the right kind of talent, with the good intent and all. See, the point is, you want to pick people from environments that have already nurtured them in some way or shape and form, right? Like, so if certain universities do have a record of producing really good talent, that means it's also highly likely that they'll continue doing so, right? Like, cultures don't just switch overnight. So I would look at them, I would partner with them and say, like, I will want your best 10 people. I will make sure that they get placed at the right, exactly in your model, right? And I don't know, I would probably even codify that in some kind of a contract or something, right? Like, I want your 10 best rankers from these streams, and I'll do, like, let's say, one round of conversation or something, right? Like, just a basic level of screening that they also want to do this. And I would get them, and I would be the top of the funnel for the companies, and I'll sit in the middle. But at the same time, I will not waste their time, the students' time. So basically, in whatever overlap they have in the last 6 months of their university before they get their degrees, I'll make sure the transition to getting to a good company is as smooth as it can be. And that way I win on both sides, because here I as long as I maintain the steady flow of talent, I am in the speed dial of, like, all the best companies, who constantly need, like, good talent influx, right? And the funny thing is, like, top of the funnel, like, I used to actually have a very different point of view on this, but now I've learned the other way around is true. That top of the funnel, talent top of the funnel is a great problem to operate at, which is also why, like, I know there are people who have very different opinions about 10K design and all, but I still feel that it is actually helping some designers get a sense of where the industry is and what it entails to kind of and what it takes to get in, right? So because in an industry deprived of literally everything, you have to celebrate efforts that do at least a little bit, right? So I think I would do that, and so that's my take on, like, the alpha part, right? Like, I think universities are the right place, right? And that's just hedging yourself, because, like, you have a higher likelihood of finding the right people. Other than that, I think what was the question you were asking, Kedar?
How do you spot that thing? Like, I mean, you took a different trajectory, but like generally when hiring,
Oh,
like what do you
yeah,
expect in kind of portfolios, or like
yeah.
how do you take that bet?
I have a very interesting idea here that I've been thinking about, haven't actually shared with anyone yet, but I used to always remember, in at least in my engineering days, there used to be tech fests, and there were never design fests. I think I don't know if somebody has tried this. Obviously, I've not done my research, but I would at least want to actually do a do a sort of a design festival, a 3-day design festival in like a giant university where you it's like you have other students from all over India, from other universities coming to this university, and there is like a design fest. There are like talks happening from industry leaders. There are like fun exercises happening. There are like competitions happening, and obviously, I mean, not to make design competitive. It's more like it is just a filter to gauge interest, right? So I wouldn't actually rely on a portfolio, but I would rely on, like, what is the level of participation, who are actually interested in this kind of a career, right? Like, who are at least, like, I mean, at that point you're only gauging for that, like, they're way too young to have any meaningful body of work. What they will probably show you, like, logos they're made for tech fest, right? Like, that's how kind of most designers careers start, right? But have that, right? Like, have poster writing competition, have like AI competition, right? Like, generative AI, are like students able to use generative AI and create like a meaningful presentation for like a food brand, let's say. That's a competition you run, and you judge and give feedback, and like you kind of give them a taste of like what it looks like. You do like a design Shark Tank, right? Like, why not?
Hmm.
So I think that's kind of what I would do. I would generally just create excitement around design in colleges. And why is that? Is because the current world of design startups is so far removed from like the academia, or like that entire university culture, is that just bringing them together itself, it could be a huge win, and like I've been leading design for whatever last 4 or 5 years. Like not once have I actually got an invite for like a design fest speaker, or like, because there are not many happening, I think. And so I would love to see this happen, like a design up, or like one of our big brand conferences actually doing it at a university, ensuring tickets are cheap, ensuring participation is easy, ensuring companies put in money to sponsor this conference so that they can kind of make it happen. For you can't sell like an 8,000 rupee ticket to like college students, right? Like they can't afford that. But are they not interested in attending? If it were to happen in the campus, 100% they would attend. Like you would get engineers attending these, if they could. Like present your case studies there, present your like day in the life of a designer to them, and then look how excited they get. So I think top of the funnel excitement needs to be created. And then let's see, maybe 2025 we can make something happen.
Yeah. No, great idea, because in fact, it's a sad situation, and also for me it was very pleasant. So I was invited as a speaker and I think Kshitij Anand also from Paytm at Ahmedabad Design Week. So I think there are a couple of weeks. I think there's Hyderabad Design Week and Ahmedabad and
See,
Kerala, if
even
I'm
I didn't
not
know.
right.
I didn't know. I
Yeah,
think
so
they
there are
they they better brand well.
couple of design weeks which happened, and I was there as a so this the year which I gave a talk, the theme of the festival was design for defense,
Nice.
and our India's highest order army person was there, and he came and he said like, listen, students, like I can hear half of the people, like almost all the people here are designers, all the students are designers, and we need water 10,000 feet high, and it gets frozen in the pipes because of the temperature. Why can't you design better pipes? Why can't you design,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, you can design an AK-57 also, whatever. But it was a very different theme altogether. And the sad situation was when I was around, those who knew me वो कमिंग एंड सेइंग सर यूआई यूएक्स में लाइक आना है हमको मैं बोला यार इधर दुनिया लाइक it's a different world altogether. You are so exposed to
See, I
so
think,
many different of things, but
yeah, as a company, you can have like a employer branding team in your org
hmm,
who has to work 24/7 continuously, do all of this, or you just do one of these right, and
hmm,
you are set. I mean, you don't have to continue building the team throughout like a two three
correct.
year period. Yeah, you build a team once, then like a few months down the line you have to like replenish it with new talent and all. But like, so you can be set for a while if you do this once and really well, right? To give
Yeah,
you one
yeah,
example, like companies like Pixel Space, right? Like who's building satellites out of India, like an Indian startup, or Atomberg, who makes like fans, like
yes.
literally pankha, right? Like
बहुत सही है.
now, how many designers are today like, jumping through hoops to get to those companies? Like not many. Ether, right? Like I told Tarun many times, right? Like if you just go and show, like यार हम पंखा बनाते हैं, like हमारा स्टार्टअप है, but like हमारा अप्रोच इतना अलग है और हम इतनी डिजाइन थिंकिंग लगाते हैं. चलो ठीक है, आप ब्लॉग पोस्ट नहीं लिख सकते, यू कांट पुश आउट केस स्टडीज एंड ऑल, बट लाइक एक टॉक जाके दे दी किसी ने, राइट?
Hmm,
यू थिंक पांच पांच लोग इंटरेस्टेड नहीं होंगे फ्रॉम दैट यूनिवर्सिटी टू वर्क एट दैट कंपनी? 100%.
absolutely.
और उससे ज्यादा चाहिए भी नहीं होता. लाइक मोस्टली कंपनीज लुक टू फिल ओनली दोज मेनी पोजीशंस, राइट? लाइक 50 तो नहीं होती है. डिजाइनर्स नेवर हायर्ड इन बल्क, राइट? So it's a craft position where like where you have to like just get the intent right and like just show, hey, like we have a design lab in our company where we design fans on like a giant table. There is an industrial design lab in our company where we like wire, solder. It's like it's a fun hobby project, but you're building products for people. Wow, that just sounds like an extension of my university where I go to the lab and do the same things, but I get paid for it. Sign me up. So I think like just show what that career looks like, in very different types of companies, could alone be worth it,
Hmm,
for just bringing these two academia and industries together.
yeah.
So, Hardik, I really also love that you brought up mentorship a little earlier in this conversation. And I keep going back to your notes section, but you have clearly written about mentorship and how it's different from coaching, right? In this essay called Small Slope Mentorship. So, I want to start there where can you touch upon about what small slope mentorship is? And maybe I can ask a follow up on that.
Yeah, sure. So by small slope, I only mean proximity. I think it's because our domain the reason why that is even there. The context behind that is our industry moves really fast. I think a lot of fundamentals still remain the same, but yet the type of, let's say, industries that come up, the types of domains that the best designers are actually working in shifts every 4 to 5 years, right? So what ends up happening is that if, let's say, I have a mentor who's 15 years older or like 10 years older or even 7 to 8 years older to me, like a lot of the advice that they would give me has a higher likelihood of not being useful to me than if I'm advised by someone, let's say, who's 3 to 4 years ahead of me. So 3 to 4 years I feel is like a sweet spot where the relevance of the advice is very high, but it starts to decline after that. So by small slope, what I meant is that if this is how the growth happens, like you want to look no further than 3 to 4 years ahead of you and just constantly tag along almost. you know like if I want to be mentored by someone, I'll tag along with them, and like I'll we'll share experiences, we'll share learnings. They'll open up their personal journal to me, right? Like almost that, hey, like this is what I'm going through, these are my observations, my learnings. Like hopefully if you read, you will at least know that whatever you are going through, most people go through the same things, right? Like it's more like it builds compassion and stuff. So I think that the compassion, the relevance, the likelihood of it being useful all decline the higher the delta gets, right? Because obviously their lived experiences would be of a slightly different time, purely because of speed of tech. If there was, let's say, like a different domain, right? Like for example, cricket, right? Like in cricket, I don't think, I mean, everybody could still take mentorship from Sachin, even though he's been retired for over 10 years now. But let's say in a slightly different world of like design, like that'll be hard to do, right? Or even tech, right? Like a lot of how people used to do web development, like a lot of that is now outdated, right? Like web development now happens very differently in companies, right? Like a lot of new roles have come up and stuff. So I think this is just to respond with the way the world is evolving. Like you ought to look no further than that. But I've seen anomalies. Obviously, there are outliers, right? Like I have mentors who are 12 years older than me, 10 years older than me, still providing spot on advice. But also, some advice does become timeless. As I said, right? Like consistency, showing up, just being sincere and all of that. So like, it's not the end of the world if you have someone much older. I put myself in that bucket now, having designers who are 22, 23 in my team. But you can see the difference, right? Like I can't give them the same advice as a mentor, Shreyas. Like if like I wouldn't give them the same advice that I would give to, let's say, someone like Sankalp, who's like literally 3 years behind me in age, right? Like I think he's a much better designer than I am, but someone who's 12 years younger, and I have them, right? It's a very it's messes with your brains. But I can't. So then I start to learn to kind of have isolated conversations. Like these people, like you kind of give them slightly different type of advice. The younger Janta, like you tell them very different things. So you have to kind of compartmentalize, and that's what I meant there.
Someone joining the cricket team now probably should talk to a Hardik Pandya instead of
Don't
Sachin.
sign, don't sign 20-year brand deals. Like sign like a 2-year brand deal.
But there's something that's obviously been very valuable to me as well in my journey as an entrepreneur, and I've written about this topic, right? Like for me, Sidhu and Abhineet, for example, have been like super helpful in my journey. And I really feel like we should really, mention names of people who've really helped us on that journey. I think in general in the industry, can you sort of, talk about a few people who've been very influential in the journey? You obviously mentioned Suneet and Mesh, but are there any other folks you want to mention who've really helped you along the way?
100%. I think I've had like many long, like elaborate conversations with Harish, and like in my moments of like self-doubt, or in my moments of like what is even all of this, like I think he ends up being someone I admire a lot and like derive a lot of energy from. Right, the guy is literally like leading a team, almost a co-founder, right, and has a music band, travels all around the world playing. He ends up being one very, very strong mentor, and I'm fortunate that he's always afforded time. Another one is Apur Pandit, who was the head of products at Instamojo. We have still kept in touch. I still ping him for like any random question I have without context, and he would kind of take time out, to jump on a call or like answer or like help out with a like very thoughtful note. And like the funny thing is, like, every time I feel I have become smart and I've become like wiser, you send like the situation to them and you explain your actions, they would reply with some perspective that you actually never had, and you're like, oh god, how did I miss this? Yes, it makes so much sense, right? And so you always get wised up by somebody, and then you are thankful because it's hard without like it's so lonely otherwise, right? Like, you can't talk to your team about your problems, you can't talk to your founders all the time about your problems, because those relationships are not meant to be that. So it's only these people, like, who you can continue going back to. I have there's this friend of mine. I mean, you can derive mentorship from people younger than you also, right? Like, there's no age factor here. A friend I consider as a mentor is Mohit, who runs his own startup now, investment. Mohit is now someone who always brings that validation that I oftentimes need, right? Everybody needs validation, right? Like, hey, like, you, you see how far you've come, like, every time I kind of crib about, like, yaar, ye acha nahi chal raha hai, wo acha nahi chal raha hai, like, kya hi point hai, like, abhi I thought I had sorted everything out and now it's all crumbling down again. And then he's like, him being a founder, I become a sounding board for him also, because he brings similar problems also. So it's kind of like a feedback loop that is vital, because see, oftentimes, like, you can't I mean, your spouse will not be of the same domain sometimes, right? Like, it's very hard to have these conversations at home all the time, right? So you need this outlet where people who either have had similar experiences or or kind of can completely call out your BS on some of them, right? Like, अरे यार, ये इस बात पे कौन stress लेता है? Like, so these are the people, Apur, Mohit, Harish, these are people I consider. And then obviously there are there are more. Deepak Abbott has always offered a helpful word whenever I've needed one, like, see, I think the powerful thing here is, like, imagine how impactful it can be when someone so accomplished, who you speak to, just says this, ki, Hardik, you'll be fine. I know you will be fine. And that honestly is, some days that's all you need, to keep going, because यार, आपको भी पता होता है आप केपेबल हो, आपको भी पता होता है आप सॉल्व कर लोगे, आपको भी पता होता है कोई और नहीं आने वाला, आपको ही सॉल्व करना है, आपको ही पुश करना है, आपको कोई चीजें, यू विल हैव टू मेक देम हैपन. बट दैट बिलीफ ऊपर नीचे होता रहता है. यू जस्ट नीड कि कोई आके रिफ्यूल कर दे, भाई ये बिलीफ थोड़ा कम हो गया, भर दे. सो इट्स जस्ट अ फ्यूल पंप दैट यू हैव, राइट? कि भाई जाके थोड़ा सा पेट्रोल भरवा दो, so that you can go back to work the next day. So I'm happy to have like some 7-8 people now, in different contexts, but a few
Nice.
have remained constant over the last decade. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nice. Cool. I think यार ये तो काफी लंबा कॉन्वर्जेशन हुआ, एंड आई विश वी कैन कंटिन्यू. मे बी we'll connect back again for a separate episode,
Sure.
कुछ और बातें करने के लिए. But just to conclude, I wanted to ask, like, एक्चुअली मैं ना, ये बेस्ट हायर्स के बदले वो तुम्हारा जो पॉइंट है ना, सेकंड सीट एट द टेबल, उसके ऊपर करते, बिकॉज दैट्स अ मोर interesting question. Okay, huh. So, Hardik, I wanted to conclude with our most buzzword, right? Seat at the table. बहुत and you started in earlier references. You said that when you hire someone junior or someone like fresh, there's no sense of entitlement. While I have seen like a lot of designers, there is a baggage of, yeah, I don't know, maybe coming right from Steve Jobs to the industry so far. So a lot of people think we already have a seat at the table, right? And you have written an article about it also. So can you just elaborate more on that? Like how um, is it earned? Is it kind of some mentors, some founders really value it? How does these dynamics play, and what advice slash tip would you give to young designers when they say that यार मेरा कोई सुनता नहीं
Yeah,
है?
yeah, yeah. No, I think एक काफी simple answer है कि see, some places have it, some places don't, right? And I obviously have been very fortunate that Unacademy has never had that problem. Part of the reason why I took the job was also because it was made very clear at the time, right? I think places that don't have them, right, they become very challenging, right? It's, I mean, even Brian Chesky had said that recently, right? Like you can't make a company design oriented later, right? Like either you are you are design minded from the get go, or you are not. And there are no single ways to become successful also. It's not that a company not design minded would actually fail. Like you can succeed through many other means also. It's just that design is a specific way of building and empathizing with users and all. That way is in many contexts slightly more likely. So but again, like this, by the way, this is still a choice. A lot of founders still end up making a choice where like as a function, they don't want to give design as a function or seat at the table, right? Like they just operate in a way where like the design decision making, see, the design happens whether a designer is involved or not, right? Like that's what we say, right? Like so even if a designer is not involved, some design work happens, decision making happens, user based thinking happens, right? Like poor or not, at least you don't have that barometer because a designer formally is not there. Um, so what ends up happening is that's a choice. A lot of founders say that I'm okay taking the costs of not having a designer, but I don't want the benefits that come with it, or rather, they see them as oftentimes costs also, right? Like I don't want the burden of having a design function because they might slow us down, or they might have opinions, or they might not have objective ways of deciding. Whatever could be the reason. Now, what could you so point is that more or less this decision is already taken at a company level, right? Like it actually is not, I mean, when people say how can I have seat at the table, no, you either already have it or you don't, right? If you have it, if your function has a seat at the table, then the only next question you can ask is whether you will ever get a chance to sit on it, or somebody sits there on your behalf, right? Like your manager or boss or leader or someone else, right? So the point is that design this decision is kind of decided much earlier in the formative days of the company, and later the actual question is like what are you doing with it, right? What are you doing with it? And this is what my point of that article also was, ki, like most of the work we do is untethered, right? And when I say untethered, most of the design work we do is untethered, is we don't actually connect it to, mostly we don't end up connecting it to outcomes. And it's changing, by the way. So this I'm noticing a shift in companies where like the maturation is happening. This was more true, let's say, over the last 4 or 5 years than it is today. So in 2023, for like as um, designers started to, as the average seniority level in companies of designers started to rise up, they have started taking more ownership. They have started being more accountable for outcomes. So this is changing, but it's not yet a fully solved problem. Like right, like for a product manager, their entire work starts with accountability, right? For a designer, it's oftentimes an afterthought, or it's attached later, right? I think when designers start their work with accountability, that's what it means to have a seat at the table, because you now are invested in the success or failure of this. Like you have a skin in the game, right? This is also why a lot of the times, like people who outsource work, or people who work as a team who's outsourced design team, even despite they are on the payroll of the company, right? Like they feel like we operate like an agency. हम कोने में बैठते हैं, हमारे पास यहाँ से प्रोजेक्ट्स आते हैं, हम काम करते हैं, दे देते हैं. उसके बाद लाइव कब हुआ, लाइव टाइम पे हुआ कि नहीं, हमारे डिजाइन चॉइसेस की वजह से टाइमलाइंस मैसअप हुए, we have no say in that, or we actually don't take ownership of any of that. That's honestly not what seat at the table looks like. Seat at the table starts from like Did you start with a problem statement? तुम involved थे कि नहीं? Did you do initial whiteboarding with the team? Did you show a direction? Did you show a range of possibilities? Did you end up, participating in taking important decisions that led to design before it even got to the pixels, right? So, is your involvement, the on-feet involvement of yours, is that already there before? So it's literally like if you zoom out, the ownership or design seat at the table looks like this, right? Like you're part of the formative conversations. A lot of them is still words in the air, right? Debates, words, discussions, pros and cons, market analysis. It's all verbal. Then there is like planning, which is still again verbal. Then there is actual design work, which is this slice. And after that, there is the entire execution work or production work, right? So for this, if you sit here, if you never leave these walls, right, like you would have no right to complain about I don't have a seat at the table and stuff, right? And honestly, oftentimes junior designers don't even have a choice. They somehow have to remain confined in this. But the lead designers or the design managers and all, they have no reason to remain confined to this. They have to operate in the margins, right? And in order to operate in the margins, you have to talk sense. You have to bring value. Why? I'll give you an example. Let's say a company is creating a 0 to 1 product, right? And they have created a team of product manager, designer, engineering. Okay, staffing is done. It's an invested project. Should we launch, let's say, in multiple countries? Okay. Should we launch in, let's say, India and Southeast Asia? Now, this question comes up. You think a designer should not or cannot add value to this? 100% they can. What does it take? You have to go research. Okay, what are other products, similar products in the other markets? How successful have they been? What was the role design played in their success? 4 input to de sakte ho na, abhi, right? The other thing could be, let's say, how long should what should be our MVP, right? What should be our MVP? हम Delight पे इतने frameworks लिख चुके हैं as an industry of as a cohort of designers. आपका responsibility नहीं बनता वहां पे help करना to what good MVP should be. What should be the first product that we launch? Notification का आपका copies इतना फटा हुआ है, आपका एज अ डिजाइनर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं बनता कि मैं प्रोडक्ट कम्युनिकेशन को भी ओन करूं या एटलीस्ट आई हैव अ से और अ पर्सपेक्टिव अबाउट इट. आपकी प्रोडक्ट को कैसे मार्केट किया गया? Did you make a launch video about it? Did you make like an influencer video about it? Did you launch it in like a different way? Are you not invested in that problem statement? Are you not invested in the packaging of the product, brand of the product, tone and voice on social media for the product? So I think it's about, see, I mean, the funny thing with ownership is that it honestly doesn't stop anywhere. For all you know, I could also say कि भाई यार ऑफिस में लाइटें क्यों चालू है, बंद करके जाओ रात को. ओनरशिप का कोई एंड थोड़ी होता है. सो आई फील हमें it's very we like complaining honestly as a species, and I think थोड़ा हमारा ये ज्यादा रहता है. It's also because pixels are very comforting, people are hard, right? So हम always easy problem पकड़ लेते हैं कि अरे पिक्सल तो सॉल्व हो सकता है ना, पिक्सल सॉल्व करके फिर बैठते हैं, बाकी का काम तो लोग देख लेंगे. अरे वो देख लेंगे, ऐसे ओनरशिप नहीं आती ना. आपको आगे मतलब you would have to expand your horizons of ownership. That's what I'll tell you. Like, I have seen 2 or 3 actual examples of designers being invited to preemptive conversations about a new idea or a new problem statement just because they previously added value in a completely unrelated context. Because people don't forget, they need help. They want more diverse perspectives, at least early on. Disagree and commit तो देखो हर लोग कर लेगा, क्योंकि उसका पेचेक उस पर डिपेंडेंट है, तो वो मना कर ही नहीं सकता. काम तो करना ही है उसको. सो देखो, डिसएग्री एंड कमिट के वांदे कोई ओपिनियन इनवाइट नहीं करता, होता नहीं है. इट्स जस्ट दैट यू आर नॉट विलिंग टू गिव योर पर्सपेक्टिव. यू आर नॉट विलिंग टू टॉक सेंस. एंड दिस इज अ स्किल पीपल डोंट होन. यार आपको भाव कोई देगा नहीं, आपको मांगना पड़ता है एंड देन जस्टिफाई करना होता है. और आपको वो वैसी मोमेंट्स पे यू हैव टू यू वुड गेट अ फ्यू मोमेंट्स हियर एंड देयर.
करेक्ट.
यू हैव टू विन दोस इन ऑर्डर टू से कि यार नहीं, ओके, आई थिंक ये उसने अच्छा पकड़ा था, उसको लेके आओ नेक्स्ट मीटिंग में, 4 क्वेश्चन में उसको भी पूछूंगा और उसका ओपिनियन मांगूंगा. बिकॉज हाउ एल्स वुड पीपल नो कि भाई तुम्हें इतना आता है. हाँ भाई, तुम्हारा मुंह देख के थोड़ी मुझे पता चलेगा, तुम कुछ बोले होंगे. इफ यू हैड एक्चुअली एग्जिबिटेड सम साइंस ऑफ वैल्यू, तो seat at the table उसके बाद, like honestly in our company we have never once discussed seat at the table, never once, and yet every time Gaurav has an idea, I am the first person he pings, even till date. या तो एक वॉइस नोट आएगा, या तो एक रिटर्न नोट आएगा, या तो एक नोट का स्क्रीनशॉट आएगा, हार्दिक व्हाट डू यू थिंक, एंड देन वी जैम. उसमें मेरा कॉन्वर्सेशन कभी डिजाइन पे होता भी नहीं है. इन दैट कॉन्वर्सेशन इट्स ऑल अबाउट लाइक, हाँ गौरव दिस में वर्क बिकॉज एक्स वाई जी, दिस में नॉट वर्क बिकॉज लेट्स से स्टिकीनेस नहीं है, रिटेंशन नहीं आ पाएगा, अक्वायर कैसे करेंगे, कैक हाई होगा, एलटीवी नहीं मिलेगा. हु टोल्ड मी टू टॉक अबाउट दीज थिंग्स? मैं तो डिजाइनर हूँ. नहीं, बट यू हेल्प eliminate the cloud, you help bring clarity na in some shape and form. So I think a common, if we consider the whole thing as a common purpose and we kind of apply ourselves more than just the pixels, I think ownership is possible. And by the way, I don't think designers today need to do anything different. I think wo already ho raha hai in a good way. Things are moving in the right direction, but it's just that this is what a culture of where seat has already been awarded looks like. You know, एक अच्छा seat होता है वो, आके बैठो, you know, help, truly help out. You know, feel the like जब चीजें अच्छी नहीं जा रही है, feel the pain, right? Like यार चार solution आप भी offer करो, सोच के आओ. अरे यार retention नहीं बढ़ रहा है. Okay, what have we done about it? कुछ डिजाइन से सोचा है, या वो भी वही सोचेगा और बताएगा और आप खाली सीट के लिए रहोगे? So seat that's a decision making table के ऊपर सीट मांग रहे हो आप. वो डिबेट टेबल नहीं है जहां पे मैं बस सुनूंगा. यार मुझे तो ऑडियंस बन के आना था. मोस्ट पीपल हु आस्क फॉर सीट एट द टेबल आस्क बिकॉज दे थिंक कि वहां शो चल रहा है. हमें तो देखने के लिए सीट चाहिए. नहीं, देखने के लिए सीट नहीं चाहिए. वहां आके यू वुड हैव टू साइन ऑन डिसीजंस योरसेल्फ विथ योर ओन प्राइड, विथ योर ओन मेरिट. तो वहां जा रहे हो एक्ट करने, कि आप यू हैव टू ऐड वैल्यू ऐड करने जा रहे हो. नहीं कर रहे हो तो दूसरी मीटिंग. आई हैव सीन पीपल गेटिंग किक्ड आउट ऑफ मीटिंग्स from second time onwards. If first time they did not add any value, that's how fast the feedback loops often get. कि सीट जितनी जल्दी मिलती है उतनी जल्दी चली भी जाती है, कि भाई नहीं यार तुम्हारा काम तो नहीं लग रहा, छोड़ दो फिर. You know, so that's, yeah, long rant, but
no. Yeah, it completely makes sense. And you touched a lot of points about lead designers working on those margins. In fact, मैं मेरे side से जोड़ देता हूँ. There could be like, this is what I tell my designers is that irrespective of what level you are, assume you're a senior or junior designer, I think the most fundamental value you can add is help visualize. Right? कोई like the first phase आपने जो कहा, like
spot on,
जहाँ पे words चल रहे हैं, I think you can just sketch, right? Like, I mean, you know the best practices and you know a little bit of hierarchy, you know a little bit of developer guidelines. Just like sketch it out and help. Like what, it will be thrown away, right? But
you know
took an effort, right?
How fast shapes and visuals help close decisions is much faster than words. People are extremely we are visual as a species, right? Like we are, it's very difficult for groups of leaders to process words. There are very few companies that operate that way. Amazon is a great example, but most other companies, they operate on like visual, like show them. This is why charts, graphs, visuals, infographics, right, have a lot of value, because they show the magnitude of everything, right? So because our brains can't process numbers well, our brains can't process it. If I were to describe a design in a room full of leaders from sales, marketing, product, everybody's imagining something different.
Correct.
So how do you bring them together is like, just put it on the TV, like, hey, this is how I imagine this experience could look like. What do you all think? Oh wow, हाँ, makes so much sense. आपने यहाँ पे रख दिया, यहाँ पे रख दिया, आपको navigation में सब incorporate कर दिया, great, notification वहाँ है, nice. Yeah. That's like 5-minute conversation. Like that's what say prototype skill meetings, right? Like prototype skill meetings, because meetings then no longer are required. You know how many product ideas we would have killed in Unacademy before they even went to engineering, just because after designing we realized this would not work. So design ended up, अब मैं तो लिखूंगा अपने पर्फ में, I ended up saving so much cost, you know. इतना सारा हम build करके fail हो सकते थे, हम पहले ही fail हो गए design पे ही. Is that failure of design? No, that's actually a great use of design to show why something is a bad idea. You know, so like when you give shape to an idea, and I think this is something these guys at Basecamp, I think Ryan Singer is a great designer, works at Basecamp, has written about this, right? Like when you give shape to your ideas, you truly put them to test. Yeah, right? Ki like, okay, wow, it becomes much, much easier to assess the merit of an idea when it takes shape. It's hard because words don't have shapes, right? Like shapes have shapes. So I think that's why that and हमारे में, I think Unacademy में, it's become one of the most critical functions of our team. We spend so much time in designing, artifacts that are explorations of imaginary concepts. Only 20% of our actual work shapes, by the way. Rest 80% actually is just for our internal communication and conversations, you know? So it's mostly for us to assess. Like I would have designed, like Sankalp knows, right? Like we would have designed 4 or 5 full-fledged apps over the last 3 or 4 years, never to write a line of code about them. Why? After designing, laga ki, हाँ यार, नहीं, this won't work. It's not because design is bad. It's because the idea was bad. But how did we know the idea was bad? Because we gave it shape. We gave it something tangible to kind of assess it with.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. No, brilliant. Shreyas, you have
A
anything
shared
else?
sense of no, it's just so valuable to have that shared sense of reality, right? And designers have that superpower to actually materialize that.
Yeah. पांच नए आइडियाज लेके आएंगे डिजाइनर्स आपके पास, आप बोलोगे भाई हमारा एज अ ग्रुप हमने क्या गोल डिसाइड किया था, रिटेंशन, इससे रिटेंशन इंप्रूव होगा, नहीं होगा तो फिर हम टाइम क्यों वेस्ट कर रहे हैं आइडियाज पे? आइडिया बढ़िया होगा, मना नहीं कर रहा हूं मैं, बट डज इट हेल्प अस एज अ टीम टू विन? डिजाइन आइसोलेशन में थोड़ी जीतेगा। इस आइडिया पे इंजीनियर क्यों काम करे? बताओ मेरे को एक रीजन। अगर इफ दैट आइडिया इज नॉट कनेक्टेड टू द सिंगल गोल वी अग्रीड ऑन, why should a developer waste a day on this? They shouldn't. So
Correct.
as soon as you create that single evaluation कि भाई यही करना है सबको, everybody has to do it and everybody has a role to play. That's the only thing, that's the only way people feel that shared sense of purpose, and that usually takes care of the seat.
Yeah. We'll do a separate topic, a separate episode just on this, but taking researchers, because मुझे लगता है like those are further siloed, like they are like in different world. But anyway, okay, I think I'm kind of not done with my question, but in the interest of time, we can wrap up this episode. Shreyas, you wanted to add anything else that I have missed, or you think we should have?
No, I think this was amazing, and maybe we can do this in person next time.
Yes.
Given Hardik enjoys that format a lot more.
Yeah,
But yeah,
100%.
thank you, Hardik.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Shreyas, for being a co-host, and many thanks to Hardik for being on the show. It was lovely. Lot of मुझे like दिख रहे हैं कि कितने reels बनने वाले हैं इसके, ठीक है? So thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks for being extremely patient with my rants, and great conversation. As I said, right, like these are all my favorite topics, so I never get tired of talking about these. So thank you for keeping it super in depth and engaging.
Awesome. Cool. अभी मैं exit outro बोल रहा हूँ. Okay, that's it from today's Gyan session. I once again thanks Hardik and Shreyas definitely to you for being a co-host. We should do this more often, and maybe one more in the series definitely. Thank you all the listeners and viewers for listening till the end. I hope you have reached this end. Now we are also on YouTube format, so you can check that out. I wish to once again thank Godrej Design Lab for bringing you this episode. GDL, Godrej Design Lab, is an initiative by Godrej and Boyce, launched in 2014. Today, GDL continues with the intention of making life brighter and better through exploring how design impacts our life and how can it make it better. The team at Godrej Design Lab is focused on engaging the community through thought-provoking events, supporting upcoming talent, and showcasing how design innovations can create better products and systems. Do follow us on Instagram at Godrej Design Lab and at Audiogyan Podcast, or check out Audiogyan Podcast on YouTube. Shreyas, Ownpath ka plug.
Yeah, if you're a designer looking to upskill, you should definitely check it out. Or if you're a design leader or a product leader looking to hire, please reach out to us. We'd love to help you.
Awesome. Hardik, are you hiring? Are you like, whatever, like any plug that you want
No.
to?
No, I wish I was. I would just plug the team though. I think the 3.5 years would not have been so much fun, so productive, if not for the phenomenal team members, the support they have shown, and the dedication they bring. Is it just makes it 100 times worth showing up every day, right? So I'm super grateful, indebted to them, right? And especially the design leads that I worked with, right? Krishan Pal, Satwik, some of them have left, so obviously they now have their own career trajectories, but had great fun. Charmi, who recently left, a phenomenal job that she did here. Sankalp, who's still with us, is doing great now, leading the entire test prep. So quite a big charter. I'm super happy for him. Anukriti, everything creative you see in our products, right? Like it's all been her. Ever since I joined, so she's had as many years. Also phenomenal work. Prithvi, Rishi, who's been like our 0 to 1 champs all throughout, right? Like now they've competed like 4 and 6 years respectively. So quite crazy. So I think, yeah, I could go on, but the point stands, right? I think it's been remarkable, and one of the better team setups that I have personally witnessed, and happy to have been a catalyst for all of this. So I hope long it may continue.
Great, great. All power to you. And look to having both of you again on Audiogyan very soon. Thanks. Take care. Bye. And that's it from today's Gyan session. For show notes and more Gyan, visit audiogyan.com. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at Audiogyan Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.